What's up, guys? This is Tori Kravitz, joined by my co-host Alicia Atout, and welcome back to another episode of She's with the Band. How's it going today, Alicia?
Don't those words just roll off your tongue now? It's crazy.
Yeah, I know. I feel like every episode we're just like baffled at how awesome this podcast is and how many interviews we've been doing. But this is our life now, dude.
And
This
I
is
love how
it.
we're just openly like, yeah, our podcast is awesome. Take it or leave it. This is where we're at. And I completely avoided your question in terms of how I'm doing. So apologies, but I'm doing wonderfully if you haven't been able to tell. How are you?
Now, before we get on with the rest of today's episode, I'm going to let you guys in on something awesome. I don't know if you've heard yet about the touring event called Sugar, the New Metal Party, but this thing is so awesome. They have upcoming events all over the country, so if you live in the United States, odds are it's coming to a city near you soon. It's a DJ party in a similar realm to Emo Night, except wait for it. They're playing all of the new metal hits you know and love. I've been waiting for something like this for ages, so I rushed to Atlanta for the one recently, and I really didn't know what to expect, but it was just all kinds of people coming together to sing, dance along, mosh, have a couple drinks, and make new friends who all love new metal. So it's really freaking cool, and I can't recommend it enough. You could go to thenewmetalparty.com for dates and tickets, and I'll let you in on one more thing. I'll be DJing some of the nights coming up, so perhaps I'll see you at Sugar. Yeah, man, doing good, just chilling. Today's interview is a pretty big one. It was one that going into the prep work for it, it was a little bit daunting because, we're interviewing so many newer artists on this podcast, which I absolutely love. But today's like more of a legacy artist, someone who's been in this industry for 2 decades, played Ozfest at the height of it. Someone who has really paved the way for women in the music industry and just always rooted for the underdog. So I'm excited, a little nervous, but I think it's like good nervous in the sense of like, I think this is going to be a really interesting one. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I'm just going to tell everybody who we're chatting with so they can envision the lovely human we're about to have on. We are talking with Otep today. And I think the reason I was genuinely so hyped when this got locked down is because this is somebody who has a lot of controversy around their name, who's been doing crazy stuff over the last 20 years, has always been outspoken. And you know me, I always speak what's on my mind. So I genuinely look at that and think that is admirable. And that is such a wonderful way of living your life spiritually and in that carefree sense. So I can't wait to hear what she's going to say to us, her answers to the things that we've come up with, within that research. And I just think that she has done a lot for music along with uplifting people over the last 20 years, man. That's a long time. So she's going to have a lot to share.
I know. It's pretty remarkable. And I think the thing too that I'm really looking forward to is, like you said, she's been the center of quite a lot of controversy, or somebody who, because she's outspoken, maybe is misunderstood. And I think that's something that as somebody who, in my own ways have felt like an underdog or felt misunderstood at times in my life, I look forward that this platform is an opportunity to really get to know somebody at their core rather than just, the chatty press or the gossip that's out there. It's like, let's really get to know Otep today. So that's really my goal and my hope for this episode.
I have two goals. I have that, which we share. It's a commonality. And then I need to bring up Jim Morrison from The Doors with her. So we will see. We'll see where the convo goes, but fingers crossed we can dive into that a little bit. There are so many different working parts that create Otep as a whole. So I'm intrigued to see where this goes. It's going to be fabulous.
Totally, man. Is there any new music you're jamming at the moment other than The Doors, which we know is constantly on your rotation?
Yeah, it's embarrassingly bad. They're always on. But for me, I mean, lately I've been in this crazy early 2000s like indie rock phase. Growing up, I was super into indie bands from across the pond. So I'm talking like Noah and the Whale, the Kooks Mystery Jets, the Maccabees, Razorlight, the Cribs, all of them. And so I've had them on loop because they really bring me such nostalgia. These are the bands I waited in lines to see when I was like 16 in Toronto. I just wanted to see them live so badly. So now I'm still in love with them all. I feel like that was a really tight-knit era of some of the best songwriters that we've had in a long time, and they're very much overlooked. So yeah, that's kind of who I've been vibing with. How about you?
Yeah, dude, it's crazy you mentioned like nostalgia because that's exactly where I've been mentally as well within my music.
Yes.
I'm a him fan, which probably isn't shocking. We love all things goth, morbid, and romantic. And so Ville Valo, the vocalist of him, has released a solo album not too long ago. And I mean, it sounds like him, which is exactly what I wanted. So Neon Noir, the title track of the album, it just makes me happy, man. It's a good happy tune. So that's been on my rotation because it's as close as I can get to him since they're gone.
I wasn't expecting you to use the word happy, because whenever I associate like your gloomy, super dark, romantic, mysterious tunes, like just happy doesn't necessarily come to mind right away. But I've seen you as you listen to these songs and it brings the biggest smile to your face. So I'm just happy you're happy.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
I mean, the happy gloom. It's so good.
Exactly. Sometimes the gloom just makes me happy, and that's okay.
I mean, think about it, like how much metal makes people happy, and that's some of the darkest stuff that's out there, the heaviest stuff. So that's a whole other conversation for another day. But speaking to conversations, I think we should kick this one off.
Yeah, man. Let's bring on Otep.
Let's do this. Otep, welcome to She's with the Band. How are you today? And thank you for chilling with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm doing very well. I appreciate being on. Thank you.
Of course. We're so excited to have you on, simply because there's a lot going on. You've been announcing a lot of incredible stuff that is on the horizon. So I know both Tori and myself cannot wait to deep dive into everything that's to come.
It's exciting. It's going to be a good year.
Yeah, I mean, it's about to be your first tour, first album in 4 years. Like, I mean, it's been a long time coming. There's been a lot of anticipation, so no pressure is what I'm trying to say.
All right. Yeah, no pressure. It has been, I lose track of time because of the pandemic and everything. But to think that, I mean, this is the longest in the 20 years that I've been doing this, this is the longest I've ever been in my home, ever, at an extended period of time. And this is the longest I've ever gone without, writing a record. I usually write a record every year and a half, 2 years. So this is album number 9 coming out later this year. I'm very proud of that. And, we did a show here in Los Angeles back in October just to celebrate my first album's 20th anniversary. It's my hometown venue, the Whiskey. And it was remarkable. And I don't know, just stepping back on the stage, I was a little bit anxious because I thought, it's been 4 years and, what is it going to come back? And man, it just it didn't even feel I've been gone a day. So it was wonderful.
Incredible.
It's riding that bike, right? It just comes second nature.
It really does. It's you've been doing it as long as I have and spent as much time on the road as I have. I don't know why I doubted it, but it did. It came back, and the fans were amazing. I mean, they were amazing, and that was also a big part of it for me, was just to feel them again, feel their energy. I call it spiritual intercourse, that give and take of energy between me, my audience, my band, everything. And we just have these incredible moments on stage, and that's really what drives me to keep doing what I do, is those moments. The music industry can be unforgiving, and it can be quite harsh, and to artists and to songwriters, and a lot of people are working to change that. But it's that, to deal with all of that other stuff, and being a woman, being openly lesbian as well, in a very male dominated genre that is also dominated by a lot of conservative thinking people. Sometimes it can, if you don't have the right kind of mind, it can get to you. But for me, it's that time on stage I have that makes it all worthwhile. It's that infinite now, that magic of the moment, that alchemy, the power of music and what it can do, the emotions that it can conjure from. I mean, it can conjure new emotions that we don't even have words for yet, and that's what's so beautiful about it.
Fully. And that you've said so much that there is to unpack, but I think the reason we really wanted you on this podcast is because you're an advocate for feminism. You're a proud woman in metal, and you've been for over 2 decades. And 2 decades ago was a very different world in metal, and especially standing up for the LGBTQ plus community as well. So from when you started to now, What were some of the biggest changes that you've witnessed as far as how minorities are treated, especially femme people, and how we're being perceived in heavy music?
Oh, wow. Yeah. It was, my first Ozfest, I was the
Right.
only uh, female fronted band in a sea of mostly, male performers and also male audience. And so when they saw me, they were a little, they didn't know my name. They didn't know who I was. I was signed after 4 shows to Capitol Records, and we just, Sharon Osbourne herself, came to a show at the Roxy here on Sunset Boulevard and said, Otep, darling, you're doing Ozfest. And I was like, oh, okay, great. Um,
Wow.
the biggest, I think the biggest change I've seen is one, more women are stepping up um, and getting involved and expressing their not only their creativity in this genre, but also as a fan. I think that it was kind of taboo for women for a long time to be into aggressive music. It is still somewhat. I think it's sociological in a way that women aren't supposed to be angry.
Hmm.
We're not, boys aren't supposed to cry. Women, girls aren't supposed to be angry. Well, I hope I've helped change that in a big way in some ways, and just inspiring people to be who they are. And we've seen that. And, I went from seeing like, I don't know, maybe a lot of, a few women here and there in the audience, uh, maybe dragged there by their boyfriends, to suddenly the entire first 3 rows of my shows are completely women, taking way more damage than the pit because they're just getting just destroyed from the back, right up against the barriers. And then just starting to see more and more women take not just the bass player role, which is, and listen, I'm not discrediting anybody that plays an instrument or anything. It's just that it is nice to see women step up from the traditional roles that we were typically allowed, by whoever, patriarchy, I don't know,
Likely.
yeah, pretty much, to be in music. Okay, well, you can play bass. Okay, maybe you could play drums. You could play keyboard, or you could play, and now we're seeing women step up to the microphone and speak their truth. And I think that's really the biggest change. And then seeing, more and more LGBTQ people at my shows, especially, and being out, no fear. And,
Right.
sometimes for the most part, most of my band has been, I mean, typically, they're all male, and they've all been, that changes now. My new band has women in it, but
Cool.
the in the past out, and they were all, straight guys. So I had to kind of explain to them. They were like, "Wow, did you see this and this and this?" And I said, "Well, we're in a red state. We're down in the South, or we're down someplace where, maybe being who you are is frowned upon by your family or by your church or by your community. And yet here inside this dark venue, they can be themselves. So let them be
Yeah.
themselves. Let them unzip the cultural costumes and just be." And that's one of the most magnificent things I've seen. I've met so many different people who come and they thank me for allowing them. And I don't know. I just feel like I don't ever put it in that perspective. People ask me, well, why were you a woman in metal and all this? I didn't think about it. I just like, oh, I write heavy music, so that's what I'm going to do. I didn't put it in that gender, spectrum. But that's probably been it's been one of the most wonderful things to see over the past 2 decades. It's just how the community's grown, how more and more people are being inclusive instead of exclusive, and seeing the power of women really standing up and you know taking a lot of these boys to task. Like,
Yeah.
you gonna play rough? Let's play. I've had that happen where I've been on tours with other male bands where they've said their managers have called, said, can you have Otep and her band tone it down a little bit because Yeah. And
Ooh,
I
Wrong
was like,
person to ask that to.
I know, very
Hell
much
no.
so.
not really. I mean, I was like, no,
Not gonna happen.
it's not even something I could control, honestly. It's just not. I mean, when I'm on stage, the emotions that conjure those songs that I recorded and then I play, I have to relive those emotions live on stage. So it's a real feeling. And so there's really no way of, telling me to tone it down. Like, tone what down?
Tone
So
myself
Mhm.
down? That's not gonna
yeah,
happen.
No. I
this
mean,
is
the
who
whole
I am.
point,
Yeah, right.
safe
So
space for your audience. It should be a safe space for you too,
yeah,
uninhibited.
indeed. And so, a lot of times that happens and I just tell, I kind of just tell, like, if their manager's talking to my manager, I'll tell my manager to say, just tell their boys to, up their game a little bit,
Do better.
Yeah, on their off days, maybe,
Damn straight.
do some cardio or something, so
I
you can
love that.
keep up with this on stage.
There's
Yeah.
something really interesting you mentioned there that I hadn't really thought of before in terms of boys don't cry, women can't be angry. And it's just such a crazy thing that is projected out there. And as you've sung before, we know that you have such a I don't give a fuck attitude, often saying how you'll be writing something and some might hate it, and how you simply just don't give a damn. And it's kind of wild to see how we still have to defend ourselves in a way when it's about LGBTQ plus rights. So how did you originally cope with that unnecessary anger and projection coming from strangers? Or was it really just this whole time it's always been kind of water off a duck's back? I don't care.
It's a bit of both. Thank you for recognizing all of that, by the way. Um, there was a point in I'm lucky that I have a very a strong foundation in my family, my father, my brothers. I grew up with a lot of brothers. I'm Irish, I got a lot of brothers. Um, Actually, sadly, one of the reasons why it's taken me, I took this hiatus was my eldest brother, who is my best friend in the world. He died a year ago, last October, a year ago October. And he was also openly gay. He came out at 14, and again, older brother at a time when young men, especially, weren't doing that. So to watch him do that was sort of inspiring to me because he took a lot of a lot of it, and he was like, "This is who I am, and this is who I'm going to be. It's my life. There's no sequels." That was his opinion, and I'm going to live it authentically, and that's just kind of how I faced it. I remember writing my first album and going out and dealing with everything that I dealt with, and at first it was a little bit of people, I could hear the audience like snickering and like giggling, like, oh, what's this girl doing on stage? And then we do what we do, and then they'd all be cheering. And then by the time my first album came out, they were chanting our name all day long, like on Ozfest, like in between other bands, which didn't go over well with the other bands.
I can imagine.
So, and I was like, I was not me. I didn't do it. Why are you mad at me? But I remember going into my second album, and that was House of Secrets, and it was more of a concept album, and a lot of the fans, and it wasn't well received, but now it's one of the fan favorites. It's one, critics now write about it in this other language, and so at that point I really realized, I can't. I've got to, one of my best friends ever, who's one of the greatest writers ever. He's in speculative fiction. It's different. He's an author, actually. He told me, always write your truth, because that's what's going to matter, and I just like, when I took what I was writing in my journals as a young lass and took them and turned them into songs, those are my thoughts. That was my soul speaking to me. That was being my own narrator. And I didn't think that wasn't gonna change. And the more people tried to change me, the more I fought against it. And a lot of people, but I always try to stay informed. Most of my family's military, law enforcement, or scholars. And so, and then I'm the artist. So I have a lot of that from them in me, of like research and making sure that what I'm saying is correct as it can be in the songs. And if I'm not speaking from a personal experience, it's something that I've read about or learned about, and I've researched it. And so I'm speaking for those folks in a universal language that hopefully people can apply to their own lives. And it's just, you know, it still surprises me on social media when people will try to come at me and tell me that what type of songs I should be writing. And I just say, listen, it's 20 years. I'm 9 albums in. I'm not going to change. Hopefully I get better. You know, I'm trying to get better as a songwriter, always trying to never plateau, always evolve, always ascend, always soar. But my response usually is, why don't you start a band and you show me how to do it?
Yes.
And last through all the fads and be a person from, you know, that's not only from a marginalized community as a woman, but also from the LGBTQ community. And also stand up to all that pressure and not fold to public, you know, to public pressure, to, you know, the haters, the trolls, and all the other stuff that I get. I just decided, you know, what matters most is my art, and the words I say are sacred. To me, words are sacred, you know, so I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Never going to change.
Yeah, and we're here because we love what you're doing. So yeah,
so please don't change.
Do not. And there was something you mentioned there that I actually did find in my research that I wanted to touch on, was how you said that your family was primarily scholars, military, so just a different way of life and different way of thinking than somebody who's creative and artistic and a musician. And I think anyone who's, you know, a femme person or LGBTQ plus, we all understand what it's like to be an outcast in one way or another. If it's not how you're outwardly expressing yourself, and maybe just in the way you think. So I'd love to hear a little more about how you found peace and affirmation in who you are, despite being different, while also finding that community that you've built with Otep now.
Well, it started, I mean, I started before I could speak. I was, you know, I was drawn to creating or drawing and just making things. And so my mother would just give me like a piece of paper and just say, you know, draw mommy a pretty picture, you know. And so I started to do that. And I think they thought of it initially as a hobby. They didn't think that I had much, you know, I come from working class roots, like, you know, poverty class, working class roots. Like, so, you know, for them, it was about, you know, you got to get a job, you know, you need to have a salary, you know, you need to make sure you got, you know, that you're taken care of, and you know, as you get older, this art thing, it's great. You can do it on, you know, do it on the weekends, do it when you're bored, whatever, you know. But to me, it was just, I was driven to do it. And so I just kept doing it. So it went from drawing pictures. People always ask me, well, what is a picture about? Because I would draw these extremely detailed, like really, really detailed drawings. And it's stuff going on in the background, stuff in the foreground, stuff in the peripherals. And then so I started writing story, because I got tired of like explaining it. Yeah. No disrespect, Mom. Yeah, sorry, but don't get mad at me. But she watches this. She'll watch this. She watches everything.
Oh,
She's,
hey, Mom.
Yeah, I mean, my mom is one of the most brilliant people I've ever known, met, whatever. I mean, she really is. I mean, she reads medical books for fun, and veterinary. We own, as a family, we own an animal rescue, a private animal rescue. So she reads veterinarian books for fun now, or has been for the last however long we've had it. And but she also is a huge history buff, and the 18th dynasty of ancient Egypt was her bag. And so and I'm named Otep. That's my birth name. That's my real name. So that's based on Amenhotep IV, who later became Akhenaten, 18th dynasty of ancient Egypt. We know him by his wife, Nefertiti, but we also know him most by his son, King Tut. So, but he was a heretic pharaoh because he challenged Egypt from being a polytheistic religion to being a monotheistic religion, and then took their very two-dimensional flat art into being realism. He didn't want to look like a conqueror king when in fact he was sort of this like tall, lanky guy with a pot belly, and and he wanted that shown. So he changed. He there really was an artistic and religious and or spiritual, I guess, and an artistic revolution. And so I was kind of honored to be named that. But coming from an Irish family, working class roots, certain neighborhoods, like, what are you doing? You're not from Egypt. So that's where, so, and also they didn't, being, reading a lot. That was one thing my mother made me do. She was very, like, during summers, like, we couldn't go out and play. We had to read. And then we had to tell her, what the book was about that we read. Otherwise we couldn't go outside.
Wow.
And I hated it at the time, but now I'm so glad, because it taught me something very important, that reading is, feeding our mind is just as important as feeding anything else in us.
Yeah.
So as I started to get into more into art, I really got into a place where I didn't know where I was going to go. So I started doing spoken poetry. And then I wanted something more electric that was fun. So I asked a friend to like make beats for me. And I wanted like old beat poetry, Jack Kerouac, Ginsberg, William Burroughs type stuff. And, that was great, but there wasn't really a whole lot of places to do spoken poetry at that time. And then I discovered, someone showed, I read a lot. So, and I drew, I was an art, I drew a lot. I was an illustrator. So I didn't really listen to a lot of music. That's what's funny, which is what has become my career. Someone introduced me to Rage Against the Machine. I didn't know that they existed. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. That's poetry to music.
Yeah.
And then my big brother, who I mentioned earlier, who passed away, he introduced me to the Doors. I was like, oh, that's real poetry to music. And then that led me to wanting to bring in live musicians. I'm skipping over a lot of stuff because for time, I'm sure. But that led me to bring in like musicians and wanting to make heavy music. And then someone introduced me to Slipknot and Korn, and that was it for me. I was like, that's what I want to do. And the Deftones as well. And I just felt like they were bringing in all these different inspirations and types of music that they liked. And even though it was heavy and it was this and it was that, there were other things in there. I mean, the Deftones have a DJ, scratches records, Korn definitely merged hip hop and metal. Slipknot did the same thing with, they had drum and bass guy, and, they've got their DJ, they've got, they got their two guitar players who are incredible. I mean, I've known those guys since, I mean, they were all like big brothers to me. And luckily I'm still very good friends with Tori and his wife, Alicia. And so once I heard that, I said, okay, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. That seems liberating to me. I can take my Rage Against the Machine, I can take my Kerouac, I can take my Slipknot and Korn inspirations, and then I can filter them through me and try to create this thing. And so we started, and back then we had message boards. This was at the very birth of social media, and I would interact with the fans who started to know me, and we had different rooms set up on this one message board, and one was for politics, and one was for poetry, and one was for just general discussion, and I would just jump in and start interacting with them. And from that, I got to learn that, wow, I'm really not alone on this planet with the way that I feel, the things that I've endured. There are other people in other parts of the world that I've never even heard of yet, that have experienced the same thing or something like it. And that bond began there, and then it's just expanded. And now, I mean, I have just really, I don't know, I'm biased, but I feel like I've got some of the most creative and passionate fans on the planet,
Yeah. I mean, that is so incredible. And I think we all, to some extent, if getting into heavy music or feeling like some kind of outcast, we all relate to that moment where it clicks and you realize, there are other people like me. This is my home. And I imagine that's why we're all in this little Zoom chat right now, because we all found that together in some way.
That's right.
So,
yeah. And it does feel nice to have a home. And it, I used to call it, I used to say that we're strangers who know nothing about each other, but understand everything. And I think that is still true today. People that come in and just listen to, say, my 7th album or something, they'll come in and say, oh, that's amazing. And then they'll go back and listen to other stuff. And even those folks, I can watch their transformation of being, feeling like they're not alone, or feeling that they're absolutely alone, and then discovering they're not alone. And I'll see that on social media where, just say, a good example, even though it seems like it's a melancholy one. We'll have someone come in who is posting something about they're not doing so well in life, or not feeling very well. They're having, some emotional crisis, and their mental health isn't so well. And the whole Otep, like the people, like they come together, like the family, like Otep family, they come together. And then, down the line, that same person who just came in is now helping someone else who just came in and was feeling like they were before. And that's one of the most remarkable things about it. Yeah, just finding, my place. I never really felt like I had a place before. And I've found it here in this music, and in as much as a lot of the majority of this genre doesn't. I'm the one that they love to hate, I guess. But still, I found a home. I found an extended family in an extended universe. And it's really, it's nice, for your soul to find a home, and to feel, and to offer a safe space for people who don't have one anywhere else. And I think that's important. So, a lot of people give me grief about how I moderate my social media by not allowing people who are racist or sexist or homophobic or transphobic or just bigots or just assholes. Like, you can exercise your First Amendment on anybody else's social media platform.
Not here.
Yeah.
But not here. This is my house.
Moderate your own space. I think that's something
right.
fully to understand. Your page is your page.
It's right. And that it's my page, it's my place, and it's my music. I write what I want, I say what I want, and I protect my people. And if people don't like that, then don't listen to my music. I really don't care. I don't. I just don't. I'm not, if I was in this for a popularity contest, I'd write pop music. If I was in this for the money, I'd write hip hop. Even though I love hip hop, I'm just saying, like, this genre is for, the misfits and the outcasts and the folks that don't feel like they belong anywhere. And that's why I'm so proud to see it expand. And, if I had any, if I helped with that at all, then that's worth more than most anything,
I feel like there's so many little points I want to pick off on there. Like, you had mentioned everything from poetry to the Doors to growth, and I gotta just talk about the Doors for a second, specifically Jim Morrison, with his lyricism and the way that his presence almost came off as spiritual as he was guiding his concerts. Like, for me, he's hands down one of my biggest inspirations, and the way that those words kind of flow like poetry with the cool tone of his voice, it's just incredible. So I would love to know, who are some other lyricists that kind of take you on that spiritual journey, not only from a stance of, hey, I'm a fan of what they bring to the table, but also when you look at them and think, I would love to incorporate that into my work, or you have incorporated it into your work?
Sure. I mean, there's literary, I guess, inspirations as well. Muses, Hunter S. Thompson,
Dorothy Parker.
Dorothy Parker for sure. Sylvia Plath. I mean, the angsty, teenage girl in me. That's has always loved Sylvia. And I, and then Tori and Jonathan, as far as lyricists, those guys have been great. But also from other, genres as well. I mean, I go back to, again, The Doors. I go back to Jim Morrison. Not only, I mean, the first song that I ever heard of The Doors was The End.
It's my favorite Doors song.
Wow.
It's my favorite Doors song.
Stop Get Out.
Stop it. It's my favorite Doors song. In fact, I've been trying to put together for a long time, and it's really hard, but I want to put together an all-female Doors cover band called LA Woman. So anybody out there that lives in Los Angeles, plays guitar, plays the organ, plays drums, and loves the Doors, hit me up, because we'll do it. But that was the first. My brothers were, I remember sitting in our house, and our parents were gone. We're not supposed to touch any of the records because they're sacred, vinyl, and we weren't supposed to touch the stereo because, again, sacred, right? And so, but my brothers were screwing around, and our folks were gone, and so they went in and started playing the Doors, and I walked in like, what are you guys doing? You're gonna get in trouble. What are you doing? And if there's trouble, then I want to be a part of it. And they were screwing around, and I think they were listening to Break On Through. And one of the brothers left, and so the other brother flipped the record over, and the needle just landed on The End. And Robbie Krieger's first guitar notes, those particular selection of notes that he chose, or that his spirit chose, or the muses chose, or the guitar chose, I still listen to that to this day, and I'm mesmerized. I go into almost a trance-like state. But I remember my brothers were jumping around and dancing on the couch and getting, all the stuff that you're going to get in trouble for when you're a kid. And I sat down on the floor in front of the speaker, and I just listened. And when he got to, and again, because my mother made us read so much, I'm very, I was, especially mythology, I knew a lot about Greek mythology as well. And when he got to the Oedipus Rex part of the song, which is the father, I want to kill you, mother, I want to fuck you. That's from an ancient Greek story about Oedipus, who actually accidentally murders his father and marries his mother. And there's a psychological thing where they call it the Oedipus complex, where the boys they marry their mothers, right? We've all heard that thing, right? And so there's an actual, they talk about that, the Oedipus complex, where you want to replace your father, you want to marry your mother, so you end up marrying someone like your mother, for good or for worse, I guess, in some places. But I guess, sorry, I get you talk about the Doors, and I'm going to talk all day.
I can listen all day, so we fight the situation here.
Yeah, so then
we have a Doors podcast now.
Yeah, we should. I dove in, and the next album I heard was An American Prayer, which was Jim Morrison's poetry album, spoken word album. And it was finished, I think, 7 years or so. It was a few years after his death in Paris. I visited his grave, by the way, when I performed over there. It's an incredible experience, by the way. And when I heard that, I just, a switch turned on in me that, I could take this and make music, and I don't know how I'm going to do it yet, but I know I can. And it just was pollinating, in my soul and in my brain for a long time, and especially my creative spirit for a long time. But I guess other lyricists that I like would include very, off the wall. I mean, Chino, I think I've worked with, my first album was produced by Terry Dade, who did a lot of Deftones albums, and he set me up with the way Chino recorded and everything, and that was amazing. In fact, I was able to use his setup, Chino's setup, for my first album, but for my EP, I was actually able to record at Sunset Sounds here in Los Angeles, and I used Jim Morrison's mic. They still had it, and they pulled it out for me.
You must have just been feeling like this crazy spiritual energy that entire time. Like, wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't want to get too close to it, because I'm like, this is This is Morrison's life.
This is sacred.
It is to me. It was. It
Yes.
is, you know? I mean, and also, you know, his approach. You were talking about his approach to performing. That I saw a lot of the live videos, live, you know, live footage and stuff, bootlegs and things, and I saw how he brought that spiritualism. I mean, he called himself an erotic politician. He brought that you know, it was like part political rally, part, you know, religious experience, and, you know, at a rock and roll concert, you know, a psychedelic 60s rock and roll concert. So, but I guess if I was going to pull other lyricists, I'm sorry, I tangent sometimes. Tom York from Radiohead, I think, is a fantastic lyricist. Geez, put me on a spot, but you know, I also think that it's important, you know, like I listen to a lot of hip hop, so but like I like old school boom bap stuff. So, you know, from Rakim to Biggie to Eminem to Tupac, you know, cats like that, Raw Digga, Lauryn Hill. I mean, there's Lil Kim before. Well, you know, back then, Lil Kim. I mean, I don't know if I haven't kept up, so I don't know if she has any new music out yet. So I'm just saying.
We'll have to check. For all we know, there could be some crazy bangers we're missing out on.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, she might be, you know, but, and then, you know, there's, you know, and then there's other, you know, there's like Mazzy Star, you know, I mean, I'm a lesbian, so, you know, everybody falls in love with Mazzy Star, you know, and, I think those were, you know, all of those things, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to build a fusion band, and that's what this title of the genre they gave us, new metal, NU metal. Like a lot of people shied away from that later in years, like other bands that I toured with and stuff, and I just said, I was new metal then, I'm new metal now, I guess, because to me it's about fusion. It's not, I don't want to be a traditionalist where I can only stay within these parameters that someone else has set. I've never done that in my life as a human being, and I'm never going to do it as an artist. And so to this day, I still write whatever songs I write. So for example, my album Hydra, the only other concept album that I've ever done, the second concept I've ever done. Its 10-year anniversary is coming out this year. And I did basically, it's like an industrial goth rap song called Apex Predator. And the label hated it. They thought it was going to flop. They thought it was going to be terrible. The fans wouldn't accept it. And now it's one of the most popular songs that I've ever created.
Let's go. Fantastic.
You know? Love that.
I mean, I've made some very heavy songs. I mean, I have, you know, and all that. I've stayed within, I've offered, you know, I've made my sacrificial offerings to the metal gods, Warhead, Hag, Atom to Atom, all of those. But also I've kept it real with who I am. So, you know, I wrote Equal Rights, Equal Lefts. And that's actually based on a real experience I had in Hawaii, of all places, because Hawaii is traditionally thought of as sort of a safe space for the LGBTQ community. And I think I ran into the one homophobic guy in all of Hawaii.
Oh.
And I was surfing with my ex girlfriend. I don't know how many girlfriends ago, but you know, she's wonderful. I love her. I still do. I just didn't work out. We're still friendly, so it's awesome. But we went to Hawaii for our anniversary, and we went surfing. And as soon as I got done, I was unzipping. I couldn't get the zipper down on my wetsuit, and all of a sudden I feel this big paw on my shoulder. And I turn around, and there's this guy there. He's an older fella, got a big pompadour, kind of like mine, but, you know, like the Fonz or something, you know, big back. And, look, you know, he's kind of got those old man muscles, little man boobs, but he's got, you know, it looks like maybe he does like a 15-pound curl, like 20 reps a day or something, but doesn't do leg day ever.
I love how I can envision this specimen perfectly now after that.
Oh, yeah,
we all know that guy.
throw sunscreen out the window because, you know, this guy, no sunscreen at all. So he's crinkly and, you know, old man muscles and never done a leg day in his life. And he goes, "Happy Father's Day." Because I turned around, like, who is this? I thought somebody was trying to help me with my wetsuit. So I just turned around and he's like, "Happy Father's Day." And it was Father's Day. So I said, "Thank you." And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were a man." And I said, you know, and I've had this same deep voice since I was 4. I did the Big Bad Wolf for the 5th grade class as a kindergartner because I had the deepest voice in school. So I'm used to this, people making fun of my voice and everything. So he says to me, "Happy Father's Day." "Oh, I thought you were a man." I was like, "Oh, hey, that's cool. I was looking at the man boobs on you and I thought you were a woman. I was going to tell you this isn't a topless beach and you're going to get in trouble." He's like, "Oh, he's like, "You're one of those, aren't you?" And I didn't know what that meant, but I'm like, "I guess I am." So I said, "Yeah, I'm one of those." And then he said, "You got some mouth on you, huh?" And my girlfriend was behind me. And I said, "Well, yeah, you could just ask her." And so that really set him off, right? He did not like that answer. So he says, "Oh, so you believe in equal rights?" And he pulled his fists up like this. And I took a step back and I said, "And I believe in equal lefts as well." And so he goes, "Oh, equal rights?" And I said, "And equal lefts." And then he goes, "Okay, equal rights, equal rights, equal rights, equal rights." And he walked off and got in like his fake police car, police motorcycle and sped away. And by this time, all the lifeguards had run over because I'd made friends with him. And they were like, "What's up?" And I was like, "I don't know. This guy just came up to me and wished me Happy Father's Day." They said, "Oh, that guy. Whoa, okay, yeah, he's a troublemaker. Leave it to Otep to find the one guy that will actually fight on the beach," or something like that. And I was like, "Oh." He rode
We got
away.
a song out of it, at least.
Yes.
Exactly.
So
there you go.
linings.
So later I write, I'm right. It's time for me to, you know, there's a lot going on in the country at the time with marriage equality and everything that I've been fighting for and getting a lot of death threats for online from conservative folks and you know, Christian fascists who really just, you know, want to turn our country into a theocracy down here in the States. And so I decided I wanted to write this song. And again, I write equal rights, equal lefts. And it's more of like this, it's like a trap metal. And it's as close to hip hop as I've gotten, but it's heavy. And I remember again, the label said, "What are you doing? This isn't an Otep song." And I said, "How can it not be an Otep song when I wrote it? I'm Otep." And again, it became one of the biggest fan favorites. And to this day it is. But that also happened to me with Perfectly Flawed. I wrote a song about, well before people were really discussing body shaming and all that. I wrote a song about just loving who you are, loving, sure, always evolve, always feel better, do what you need to do. But remember, you don't have to, you don't, yes, of course, I want to see polished statues in a museum, but that's not humanity. That's not reality. That's art, right? So that's what the song was about. And it's a ballad. And I wrote it with this great songwriter, legendary songwriter named Holly Knight. She wrote "Love is a Battlefield" with Pat Benatar. And so we sat down, we wrote Perfectly Flawed. It's a piano ballad, played it for the label. They said, this isn't an Otep song either. And I said, how is this not? I wrote it. How is it not an Otep song? And
it's literally an Otep song.
It is an Otep song. It's everything
by definition.
It's just they didn't like the medium. They wanted it to be more aggressive. And I said, sonically, not everything has to be aggressive to be aggressive. Not everything heavy has to sound heavy. And they didn't agree with it. They didn't give me any budget for a video or anything like that. And yet, to this day, between my name, my first album, and Perfectly Flawed, those are the top 3 tattoos that people have on their bodies. And I have a lot of fans with a lot of tattoos of mine on their bodies. That was enough for me. That was amazing for me to be a part of that, because I want people to feel like they don't have to live up to whose standards are these? that they're putting on to women, and then women are buying into it, and and especially in the industry. I mean, there's a certain thing, like, you can't, there's a certain way you're supposed to look, especially now. And I blame the Kardashians for that. Hope you guys don't mind. Sorry, but I do.
I don't at all.
I'm not one of them, so it's fine.
I'm just saying, it's I have this rule. I'm a feminist. I support women, but I don't support all women. I don't support Ivanka Trump. I don't support the Kardashians. I don't support Sarah Palin. If you are familiar with these folks at all.
Yes,
but yeah. Really, have you heard of Sarah Palin?
Once or twice. She may have made the news.
That's wild to me.
Yeah.
Wow. Star news out of our borders. But generally that's my, women who support women. That's who, then, you've got me as an ally. And that's what I think has been remarkable as far as my journey in music, as well as just staying true to myself, my spirit, my roots, everything, what I believe in. And, I also, for singers out there, if don't worry about your audience so much, or trying to sound like somebody else so much. Worry about what you believe in, because when you perform it live, if you believe it, the audience believes it. And that's the biggest thing, because you can get, people, if we go back to Bob Dylan, when he went from being this guy who was like, acoustic man, to suddenly he went to electric, he got murdered in the music press, murdered. But now, we look back now and we look at, oh, these are some of the great songs he wrote, right?
Yeah.
Because when you played them live, people still saw that same passion he had as that kid. He was sitting on a stool playing an acoustic guitar. So if you believe it and you put everything you have into that performance and into recording it and writing it and all that, then the people that like your music are going to believe it as well. And they may not like it, but they're going to respect you anyway, or they're going to respect the song. And that's what one thing that I've learned, and I try to pass on to people who are coming up in this industry, especially women.
Yeah. I mean, you certainly have so much wisdom and experience, obviously, having been in it as long as you have. And something I did actually want to touch on was how you say you're like a fusion artist. And I think that applies not only in genre, but also in medium, how you're saying poetry matters a lot to you, physical art when it comes to other mediums, if you will. And so something I know you also dabbled in your longstanding career was vocal work on The Hobbit, on The Last of Us, on World of Warcraft, which is so cool and very timely at the moment as well. Yeah, it is. And so I would love to know too, because I think you're such a role model in diversity. What was it?
You said it's timely.
The Last of Us is timely.
The Last of Us, yeah.
Yeah.
Funny. I'm friends with the actor W.O. Brown, and he did one of the characters in the video game The Last of Us, and he did the mocap for it, and I did a lot of the creature noises in it. And it really getting into voiceover work was something I never really thought about until someone came up to me and said, "You got this great gravelly voice. Like, why aren't you doing something with it?" Because a lot of singers, male and female, and everyone in between, do use a lot of processed vocals, live and on album. And I try to minimize that as much as possible, because I want it to feel real. So what all this is how I sound. So when someone came to me and said, you should try, voiceover. And I had to go in and audition. I did 3 different auditions. One was for a Crest or toothpaste commercial, and one was for what was it for? I can't remember. And then one was for creature noises. And as soon as I did the creature noises, they were like, "Oh, okay, yeah, we got you." So yeah, I've done everything from The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies. I was 5 different creatures in that. I was in Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. I was in the remake of Fright Night with what's his name, Colin Farrell. I was in, I've been in Dead Don't Ride, The Last of Us, the Ghostbusters reboot, the all-female. I'm the first ghost you see in the library. I'm that ghost. I'm also a lot of
I love that.
Yeah. That was fun. That was actually a lot of fun. And then just World of Warcraft. I work with them all the time, and their new dragon expansion pack. I'm in that, so that was a lot of fun to be a part of, because we actually the directors and everybody and I and a lot of times you'll have like a director and the other and you're in your vocal booth, and inside where the engineer is, you'll have a director there, but you'll also you'll have one, usually you only have like one can on, like one ear, one headphone on, and you also are listening to like the game developers and whoever created that particular character you're doing voice, they're giving you instructions as well. So it was really fun to really just build these characters, and it's like being a kid. You get to go in and get to play with your imagination, and it's a lot of fun. And I love doing it.
It's a clever way to expand your career, like to diversify your talents. And I think that's such a great lesson for any female entrepreneurs or anybody watching this who's like, how do I get involved in the industry? Which is something we definitely talk about a lot on this podcast, is like, what a creative way to find your way in.
Yeah. And I think diversification is very important. And people always ask me, well, what do I need to do for voiceover? And it's the voice, like for The Hobbit, for example, I think they had 100,000 auditions, and they chose 5 people, and I was one of the 5 people. So that was a big deal for me, because I was like, oh, I'm part of a franchise. Like
that is a big deal. That's huge.
Yeah.
No, and I was a little nervous going in. I'm not going to lie about that or deny it. But I tell people, it was like, just make a reel and do exactly what I had to do, which is, do something commercial, because they're going to want to hear that, and then do something that's maybe not so commercial, children's charity, something like that. Do that. I've done those as well, and then do, if you can do creature noises, then do them, and then you can load them up to a SoundCloud or YouTube, and you can submit them to casting directors. And if you're not part of the union, then SAG. If you're not part of SAG, then you won't be able to get SAG jobs until you are able to book some other things. And I think it is important. We should have more. I mean, with the type of sounds that metal or the aggressive music vocalists can make, it's seamless. It should
no brainer.
Yeah, it really.
As soon as I read that about you, I was like, why aren't more metal vocalists doing? Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know, but hey, it's for me, I know that it's a very competitive field, and I know a lot of voiceover artists who are very sacred about that. They want to keep the doors closed, and I'm not like that. Like, I'm like, I got in, come on in,
Let's go.
You can do it, let's go. That's where I come from. Like, I come from a community. Like, if one comes up, we all come up, and that's the way it should be, right? We're supposed to take care of each other. And so, just recently, a friend of mine who's this really great producer, and she's, again, as a woman, even though she's enormously talented, she still has to fight for every job she gets, even though she's probably more talented than, more than half of the male producers out there. But yet, because she's a woman and she does aggressive music, they second guess her, even though her body of work is immense. And recently she asked me to feature on one of her new artists who are coming up. And I didn't hesitate, because, I've been asked to collaborate with other artists who are bigger than me before. They've asked me to be on their records, or I've asked them, and they've all said yes. And then in the end, they don't show up. Either their schedules and my schedules don't they actually do conflict, or they just don't show up. And I don't want to, I mean, I never want to be that person, you know, especially for young women who are, or women who are new to this genre. I want to help them kind of avoid all the obstacles and hurdles and mistakes and all the eager stupidity that I've had to deal with over the years, and just enjoy the ride, man. You know, that's the biggest part of it. You know, it shouldn't be a constant fight. It shouldn't be a constant battle. You know, we should be enjoying what we do instead of always having to prove ourselves. Again, I'm 20 years in, I still have to prove myself. You know, I still have to fight for every inch. And that's okay. I'm built for that. But some people aren't. And I want to make it easier for those that aren't.
Absolutely. And I think this is a great moment to transition to a segment we have on every episode of She's with the Band called the Most Jaw-Dropping segment. So we have 4 questions for you of some of the most jaw-dropping moments of your career. You ready?
Okay.
Yeah. Alicia,
Right.
you want to kick it off?
Yeah.
All right.
Get a good stretch, good warm up.
First
Woo,
up,
okay.
what is the most jaw-dropping experience that you've ever had at a show?
Oh, wow. There's a lot. I think one of the most amazing experiences is seeing the folks that started with me as young people who now are bringing their kids to my shows. I always tell them, make sure you bring headphones. It's very loud at my shows. I guess there's two. There's 2 moments that stand out, and they're probably not. It's not all of them, but there's 2. One, we played in this little tiny venue that had, and it was also like a restaurant during the day. So it was like kitschy. So they had like all these like things on the wall, like stop signs and, you know, a canoe. And someone took the canoe down and got in it, and they crowd surfed in the canoe, and they were miming
No. This is
an
everything.
orb.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I think the other one would just have to be watching. There was someone who was in a wheelchair at the back of the room and was really wanting to come up, and the crowd just picked him up safely, carried him all the way to the front, put him over by the security, made sure they were okay. I've had people ask if they can pretend to bring their girlfriend or boyfriends on stage as like part of a contest they won, and then they've asked them to marry them. And so, you know, it's been some amazing events. I think but yeah, the one where I looked out at the crowd and I saw that canoe going by.
Yeah, that's
And
something you won't forget.
I look at my band and they're looking at me, and we all just shrug and we're like, okay, that's what's happening. Let's just go. Let's go. There's a canoe. And that was pretty rad.
That's phenomenal. And, you know, you kind of led us into this question, which I thought was kind of interesting, where you were talking about how tumultuous the many things in your career have been. The most jaw-dropping misstep early in your career and the lesson that you took away from it.
Oh, I got signed after, you know, 4 or 5 live shows, and then we did some, you know, some private showcases and stuff. So I go to my first Ozfest. They're like, you got an interview, a radio interview. I'm like, I'm just a street artist. Like, I don't know about radio. What? I've never done an interview before. So they sit me down and they said, what's it like to be the female Phil Anselmo? And I blanked. I was like, Phil Anselmo, you know, no idea. And I was like, and so I just remember going, it's awesome. It's an honor, you know, hoping that was a good thing. And and I just remembered at that point, after it was over, and then I settled into it, and I think I remembered just not to be so nervous going into it, and you know, and I'll never forget Phil Anselmo ever, you know. I mean, how could you at this point? But at that, you know, back then, that was terrifying, because you know that silence you get it may be 2 or 3 seconds, but it feels like 5 hours when you're just like, because especially the way the guy said it too, it was like, I didn't really understand what he said, but I guess learn to be prepared for interviews, not worry about it, and speak my truth and be prepared. That was pretty
Absolutely.
crazy. Yeah.
Well, this one I'm intrigued to see where it goes. So it's the most jaw-dropping female artist that you'd love to work with.
Ooh. That's a good one. There's so many, actually. There's a lot. Let me think about that one. Pass, because there's too many.
Too many to name. We don't have enough time.
I mean, and especially like different genres. There's different genres where I would love to work with somebody, that's not of my genre and bring them into that world. I would love to. I think the singer for Ginger is massively talented. I'd love to work with her. I'd love to work with the singer from In This Moment. I think those collaborations would shake the pillars of heaven,
I'm on board. You have my support.
Yeah, that would be, and or just get all three of us on a song. How about that? That would just,
woo.
Yeah. I love how we just talked an already incredible idea. Exactly. Why settle for less? Let's just go for it.
Why not? All three of us take a verse. Yeah. It'd be great.
And, obviously we have you on this podcast because we really respect everything that you've done and the contributions that you've made in music. And at the same time, we also know this is an opportunity for you to speak your truth and debunk some misconceptions. So our final one here for you is the most jaw-dropping misconception that you wish people understood about you.
Wow. Well, there's quite a few of those as well. One, let's see. I don't hate men. That's a big deal. Just because I like women, or in the same way that men like women, as a lesbian, doesn't mean that I hate men. I have a father. I love my father. I have brothers. I love my brothers. Most of my band members have always been male. Most of my people that I've worked with, agents, managers, labels, all run by men, all A&Rs, everybody. I mean, so I don't know. I guess there's that. I don't know. The thing is that, so a lot of it comes from touring, like a lot of these little rumors and things from touring. And the thing is that, because my name is Otep and the band is called Otep. If anybody that is in my camp does anything wrong, I say, "Oh, Otep," and they go, "Yeah, yeah, that's right. He's like that." Like, it wasn't me. I remember I had this tour manager once, who loved a certain kind of English muffin. I was on a no carb thing during those. I'm vegan now, which is a whole other aspect. It's a whole other thing. But I'm vegan now. But back then I was like on a no carb diet. I was always dieting, always trying to get in shape and stuff. And so I remember he told the venue, "You got the wrong kind of muffins."
Uh-oh.
And he said, "Well, a muffin's a muffin." He's like, "These are for Otep, and she only eats Thomas muffins. And if you don't go get Thomas muffins, she's not playing." Oh. So the guy went and bought the muffins, came back, threw them at the bus, and hated me for years until I finally talked to him about it, because I never heard anything about this. What people, the thing is that what a lot of people don't understand is, one, I'm usually, when I get to the venue, I bring my dog with me, and he's a little dog. His name is Sir Francis Bacon, named after the father of modern mathematics, because he's so smart. And here he comes, because I'm talking about him. But my daily duties on tour are walk and feed my dog, do sound check, meet, if we have VIPs or whatever, I meet them, and then I go to the gym, or I do interviews or on site or whatever, and then I leave, and then I go back to the bus and I crash out until it's time for till 2 hours before show, and that's when I start getting ready. I have very little interaction with what happens inside the venue or with people inside the venue, but I'm always get the blame. And I think that's unfair. I've learned to live with it, but at the same time, I've also learned to make sure that I tell crew and band members, like, if you do something, make sure you tell someone your name, because it's gonna come back on me. And that's not
Yeah.
fair, because I
Can have
wasn't
another
there.
no
I
more
don't have
muffin
any.
situations.
Yeah, like, I don't want any more muffin situations, everybody. And I don't want, I just, like, it's just strange. Like, I don't know. I use that line. I'm the one that they love to hate in a song called Down, because it just seems like I'm a pretty big target, because one, again, what we've spoken about throughout the majority of this is that I speak my mind and I don't really care. If it hurts someone's feelings, like a bigot or a sexist or homophobic some person, I don't really care. I don't care. Go listen to somebody else. That's my thing. But so I think it comes to this thing where people don't like that kind of freedom, because other people are typically afraid of what others might think of them. So they are always monitoring. I do have a filter. I try to be as respectful as I can until it's time to not be respectful, when it's time to defend myself or my people. But I don't know, I get misconceptions, like I do. I don't like men. I hate men. Why do you hate? I wrote a song called Menacide, my first album, and it's about pedophiles and rapists and domestic violence people. And this men's rights group gave me the Psychopath of the Century Award for writing that song. And I said, so you're sticking up for pedophiles and rapists and domestic abusers?
That's baffling.
Wow.
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
hey, welcome to Otep world. But
It's interesting here.
Yeah. I think that, and it was phenomenal to me. I was like, that song to me is about female empowerment. It's not, and it's about our male allies who don't stick up for that, who don't put up with that kind of stuff, and so, there's a lot, but I think those are the ones that come to mind. I support local scenes. I know that that's come up in the past as well, with, like, I don't like local bands. I try to guide them. The only time that I ever have an issue with a local band is if they feel like they're using this as a moment when they're performing at one of our shows to get to party and get drunk and be crazy and loud and think that they're living in a hair metal, wet dream. And it's like, man, those days don't exist. I don't even know if they ever existed back then, but they only existed for a very small percentage of bands that can get away with that kind of stuff. And secondly, if this is just a hobby for you, great. But for some of us, this is what we want to do with our lives. We've devoted our lives to this. I missed all of my godchildren growing up because I spent it on the road. I missed all of their achievements, everything. And I missed that, but I wanted to make sure that they were proud of me, that I was building a life that they'd be proud of, and now they're almost all adults, and it's kind of hard at that time, now looking back, but they are proud of me, and so I did it.
That's beautiful. I know, that makes me cheer inside. That's so beautiful. I can tell from the smile on your face how much it means to you, and that's the best part of that entire story, seriously.
Those are my kids. They're my nieces and nephews. I love them to death. They're my kids. And so, that small sacrifice of missing out on certain things, because again, when I first started the band, I was hanging out with a lot of knuckleheads. I really had no prospects in life. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And so when I found art, suddenly I felt like I could do something with myself. And then my brothers, and they started having families, and it was like, oh no, like, what are my god kids gonna think of me? So I wanted to make sure that I made them proud, And I've done it. So I remember my mother, when the first time she heard my first record, she cried in a bad way. But she was worried that, the music, the rumors of music, oh, you're going to become a drug addict, or something. And it's like, no, Ma, I'm not, and now she's like, like I said, she's my biggest fan. And she comes to all my shows whenever I play near them. And, she's been a driving force. I come from a strong mother, and I think that's very important to have if you're a strong woman. And if you're not as lucky as I am to have that strong female influence in your life, then it's up to you to be that strong influence, so you can be that for others. And that's what I've tried to do as well. I'm never going to have kids. That's just not. I don't think that's in the cards for me. I've accepted who I am, where I am in this business, and I'm happy with that, because I get to be me, and I get to hopefully inspire others to be them. And again, if I've inspired any other musicians or vocalists, and they go on to be bigger than me, which some of them have, I won't name names, but some of them have, just because, I'm not trying to, we're on good terms. No, I'm just saying, I'm excited for them. There's no crabs in a bucket situation for me. It's, that is very typical for a lot of people who are minorities in any kind of community. There's a lot of tearing each other down. And that metaphor or analogy of crabs in a bucket, of, the crabs will pull the other crab down instead of using a ladder and then pulling each other out. And when people use that sort of scenario with me, I say, well, but that's not our natural habit. If we're so we're crabs in a bucket, but crabs don't belong in a bucket. Crabs belong in the ocean. That's where we belong. That's so, I like to stay in the ocean.
Absolutely. I mean, hey, I think there was just so much wisdom in those words, and such a positive note to leave it on, that I think really sums up why we wanted to have you here today. So I think that's a great place to leave us, isn't it?
Absolutely. No, you've been a treat to speak with, and it's just so lovely whenever we're able to get guests on this show that we didn't know previously in terms of a relationship, and walking away thinking, I just learned so much more about you and the person behind just what we hear in these things. So genuinely appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Otep.
I am honored, and thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
It's our pleasure.
And everybody watching, thank you for being here. I hope you've taken away something from this episode as well. Get ready for Otep's next album and next tour. It can be amazing. And if you liked what you heard, make sure you like and subscribe here on Knotfest. You can also subscribe on all streaming platforms for this podcast. We've been She's the Band. My co-host Alicia Atout, kicking butt as always. And I've been Tori Kravitz, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Bye, guys.
Bye.